There we go. Go ahead.
Do it again?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's 6:29 and I will call this meeting to order. We could start with the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Or better.
Mayor Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Swartz? Here. Trustee Valentine? Check.
Here.
Trustee Heck? I'll start pointing. Trustee Hunter? I'm here. Trustee Stelter?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Yes, would you like to discuss the changes?
Yeah, I would like to move to approve the agenda with the following changes. Like to remove the June 24th regular meeting minutes from the consent agenda because the minutes were not included in the packet. And remove item number 3, consideration of approval of contract for the $2 million tank rehab. That needs to be removed as well because.
Oh, can we keep that on? I want to give an update on it.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
okay.
Never mind. I move to approve the agenda with removal of the minutes from the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Great. Everybody, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thanks for the changes. And under announcements, I have no announcements. Does any other trustee? And we'll get yours first, Administrator Wynn, and then we'll do your appreciations.
Okay. I do have one announcement. We are going to have a presence at the National Night Out. Did you say it was August 5th? So this year it's at the Delta County Fairgrounds. That's Paonia Police will be there, and I plan to take a public works vehicle as well. So that'll be during the county fair.
And where is it?
It's at the Delta County Fairgrounds in Hotchkiss.
Is it a big potluck?
No, it's the National Night Out.
Basically an outreach program for law enforcement and municipalities into their communities and their neighborhoods. Delta usually hosts, but this year we're going to do it Hotchkiss.
So, I mean, do you expect the public to come
Yes.
and mingle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks. All right, appreciations.
Okay, well, here's our appreciations and community good news. So congratulations to Lynn Bear for being the Grand Marshal of the Paonia Parade. Lynn, you were the perfect choice to be Grand Marshal and you perfected your wave. And for those of you who don't know about Lynn and her amazing history within Paonia, the shopper did a great spotlight on her. And thanks to all the people who participated in the parade, from the community clown band to the horse camp and the horse pooper scoopers and everyone who threw candy to the kids. Our 78th annual Cherry Days, holy moly. Thanks to all the volunteers, the sponsors, the vendors, and the public, as it does take a village to create this truly community event. Special thanks to Marilee Telbin, the cast and the crew for bringing Little Shop of Horrors to our community. Wow, our community has such talent. Congratulations to the Blue Sage for receiving the T-Mobile grant. They were one of only 25 nonprofits across the country and the only one in Colorado to receive a grant this year. They got $28,000 to develop Sage Alley, a multi-use space for performances, workshops, and community gatherings. Congratulations to Hector for being chosen to be the new executive director of the Paradise Theater. A special thanks to Paul, who travels around the country and performs service wherever he goes. You may see him out sweeping the debris from the curbs and wheeling it away, or doing anything he can to take care of the place he temporarily calls home. This morning, he was cleaning the curbs in front of NIFSIS. And just a couple more. Congratulations to Libby and Willow. They ran a delicious root beer float stand. And the word is they gross $35. They're youngsters with entrepreneurial spirit, and they were very happy with their take. And then finally, in case you're interested in doing some trail maintenance, WSCC and the U.S. Forest Service Paonia Ranger District are teaming up for trail maintenance work in the Gunnison Forest on July 24th and 25th. This volunteer group will be working to install turnpike on Beckwith Pass, improve trail drainage and stream crossings, and they got a grant from the Heritage Trails Foundation of Roundup Riders of the Rockies to do this. So that's our good news and community news.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda unless anybody had something they wanted to talk about. If not, then we will move on to the consent agenda. And as stated previously, we don't have those meeting minutes, but we have 2 license renewals. Third Street Bistro liquor license renewal and the Paonia Liquors LLC liquor license renewal. And we have disbursements for July 8th. And Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz and I just wanted to mention 2 things that are in disbursements that we wanted to point out. And will you do the one you remembered?
Of course.
I'll do the one I remember.
Okay, so the first one is, you won't see this on the disbursements, but you saw it in previous disbursements. There was a registration fee for Clerk Vetter to go to CML.
The CMCA Institute,
Thank you. And remind me, CMCA.
Colorado Municipal Clerks Association.
Great. But she got a full scholarship for it, and we did get reimbursed for that. So,
I was amazed at how fast that came.
yeah, totally. This is a big deal. So congratulations.
$1,200? Was it 1,200? 1,300, yeah, thank you. And then what I wanted to point out on page 23 of the packet is there is a invoice that we received from Motorola Solutions for $20,902.30. And as it turns out, that is associated with the police force. And is it your walkie-talkie things you talk into?
Computer assisted dispatch.
So is it what you each wear?
No, so it's part of our computer system we use to dispatch CAD calls. So we take our notes in, all our reports get fitted in it. That's what that charge is from, but it's from prior years.
Right, as it turned out, they were billing us to an email that wasn't working and they didn't know and we didn't know. And then eventually it came to light that we hadn't paid them in quite some time. So it wouldn't normally be $20,000. We are just playing catch up for several years of invoices, correct?
Correct, yeah. When we renewed a new contract this year, that's when we were able to take a look at our accounts in full from Motorola, and that's when they found they've been billing those to the wrong address.
Okay, so we are now up to where we need to be with them. Okay, thank you. So unless there's other questions on disbursements, yes.
I do want to point out that there are a number of one-time disbursements in here for right-of-way acquisition or temporary construction easements. So we did get those signed, and we still have one outstanding, but we may just remove him from the project and just move forward. But this is for that 5th and Grand realignment. We offered $500 consideration for each temporary construction easement.
I have a question about, so you go through eminent domain with him or something, or to get?
We could, but we would go through eminent domain to just give him something in the end, which would be a driveway apron. And instead we can just remove him from the project, and he gets the driveway cut, but on his property, we're not gonna pour any concrete. Just remove him from the project.
So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second?
Second.
Okay, did you hear the second? Yeah, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
And I just realized I overlooked the public comment portion of the meeting because I didn't see anyone in the audience. And I don't see anyone on Zoom. So before I go past that, I just want to make sure there's no one on Zoom that wanted to speak for 3 minutes on anything not on the agenda. And apparently no. Okay. Then we will move on to the staff reports and start with the town administrator.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things to be aware of. One, while it looks like the interest rates didn't move from last month for our investment accounts, Part of that is because it does it every 30 days. And when I created this, it was still within that 30 days from the last one. It has been updated. It's slightly lower, but it's still a pretty solid interest rate over 4%. And I started adding some things. So in this one, you'll see something new. At the bottom left, it now says last month's total accounts. So that's last month's total to compare it to this month's total. So you can see that we are continuously being healthy in our investments. Our interest continues to generate lots of income. I checked our bank accounts again today, and we had another $60,000 disbursement for that design and engineering grant. Finally got that in, and that is now closed out. So that's another one. I do have an update on some of our grant projects. So our Pay on Your Code revision is, I have a meeting scheduled next week, or in the process of finalizing details of that meeting with Leslie. What we've been waiting on is our plan commission to pass the comprehensive plan, and that will help to inform our code rewrite. She's excited to get working again on our project, so that'll be coming soon. Once we adopt our comprehensive plan, I can finally close out the comprehensive plan grant. I'm excited about that. And there is one more for the Safe Streets for All. So we have finally gotten an approved contract. It is now, everything's taken care of except for getting the signatures. The signatures are now in DC awaiting signatures, but we know that we have our funding. So we know that we can begin to go out for an RFP to find a consultant to help prioritize our streets. So that's all exciting. One of the questions, so revenue side of things, we look pretty good throughout. We still have a surplus of funds compared to where what our expenses are throughout every department. We still have some property taxes outstanding. We're pretty darn close with our sales tax in town. And there was one question that I received earlier today about marijuana sales tax, why it's so low. And I wanted to go into Cassell to see what was going on with that. And it looks like it may not have been updated. So chances are the way that it got deposited, so this is what Cassell looks like. So I take what's in Cassell and make it so it's presentable. Otherwise, this is each individual account by month. Between June and July, it didn't change at all, which tells me we haven't reconciled that yet with the bank. So some of those things will be updated going into August. But I should note that we are 13% on marijuana sales tax, where we should be 50%, which tells me that, well, it tells me that we've plateaued and most likely will dip again in that kind of revenue. You got to understand, Hotchkiss now has 2 recreational shops, and Olathe, which didn't have any before, now has 2 recreational shops open as well. So some of that customer base that these shops may have been seeing, it's gone now. So, okay.
Could you then jump down to the occupational tax?
Yes.
And that's on that same section, because we're only at 30%.
We're only at 30%. So that's that $5 transaction fee. You got to remember, there for a while, Paonia Purple was just closed. Did not open to do any sort of business. So, that could also be part of that issue. But we actually budgeted for less, and looks like than we've gotten in previous years, and it looks like we should have budgeted even less, depending on when things come.
Can I ask another question about the occupational tax? Do we have that accumulating kind of like the sidewalks tax is accumulating? Because have we been spending it every year?
No.
I didn't think we've used much of it towards any of the things in the.
It goes, so I believe that in our audit, our financial statements goes into our capital, one of our capital funds, which we call non-major funds.
So it's accumulating.
It's accumulating.
Someone asked me about what we were spending it on, and I thought, I don't think we've spent it, actually. I think it's accumulated.
Well, so while we may not go, oh, we spent it on this, if it is a capital outlay, we have spent it.
So it's just not earmarked as coming out of the applicational tax, but it's
It
lumped
is
in.
part of that non-maintenance fund. So we are spending it as we do capital outlays.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. PD is up, so some of their fee collection is doing pretty well. And then if we go to by department, again, I'm really low, but that's because we haven't done some of our building improvements, the cameras, we haven't purchased those yet. You're gonna see that on an upcoming agenda, probably the 22nd, to get them ready to go. And then they'll be installed. They're being installed town hall, town park, all of our critical facilities. Law enforcement is, right on 49% overall. That includes that 20. That does include the 20,000. It does. So you'll see 104242 contract services. That's $8,000 was budgeted, but it's $32,756. That's because that Motorola Solutions for the computer assisted dispatch that had been made in a few years. Other than that, we are pretty much on target for a good budget. I did receive our draft of our financial statements on the 3rd, and then I received an updated one yesterday. Once I know that they have done everything they've depreciated out all the assets and they've looked at our fixed assets, that's when I'll take it and start making my management discussion analysis letter. And I'm hoping to have all of that done by July 22nd for you all to review. And I believe we may even have an auditor here as well to give a presentation. But once I have that final, this is our financial statements, then I'll start doing my worksheets and really dive into it. It doesn't take many days. It just is pretty time consuming. So while it may take 3 or 4 days, that is all I will be focused on for 3 or 4 days, just to get that done. I do still want to draw attention. So water is still seeing a net income. That's a good thing. Our wastewater is seeing a net income even after we paid for some of those aerators. We've still got 2 more arriving that we'll have to pay for as well. And most likely be at a net loss. But we still have fund balance. That's what these financial statements have showed us, is that we still have a lot of fund balance, about $5.9 million in fund balance, small funds. It's pretty good. But I do want to draw attention to sanitation or trash. We are still operating at a loss. You will get an ordinance within the next couple of meetings to update our fees. Airport, we haven't done anything with. We're still collecting, and that's it for the budget to actions.
Any questions from anyone? Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz.
Yeah, so thanks. I had sent my questions to town administrator ahead of time. Thank you for answering those. I think it's worth the public noting that we have brought in about $85,000 in interest income. And so that's just awesome. And yeah, I think everything was looking solid. I am looking at the parks budget, as we do seem to be a little bit over on that one. We had some expenses, the park remodels, the wood chips, all of that. But and I'm sure the cameras will add to the parks portion fall in there into the parks budget.
It will, and so there's actually three things that we can. There's 2 things that we can do. One, the conservation trust fund was meant to go towards like these capital outlays, and we can take from there to offset the cost that we spent out of the general fund. And then we've also got a GoCo grant that was earmarked for that project as well, and the balance of that will also be applied to this. So we should be okay though as the year progresses.
Anything else for Administrator Nguyen? Okay, we'll move on to Public Works.
This one's kind of a long one, but I got lots of pictures for it. So the playground chips, like
you had mentioned, they're all delivered and installed except for at least trailer park. We're gonna have to do some dirt work there first before we put it in, put an edge around all of the equipment. The brush clearing for the hydrogeological study was all the way completed, so that was good. The leftover dirt at the tank pad removal that was kind of hanging out there at Rover's Field, that's been completely removed. Earthworks is done. For Fifth and Grand, you already touched on it, so I won't repeat it. The RFP for the tank relining has gone out. We had the mandatory site visit on the 12th. We had about 7, 8 contractors show up. And then we had the bid reading on the 3rd. We ended up only reading 2 bids, but there was a 3rd as well, so we had 3 people bid on it. The ADA robots, we kind of touched on those too. Those blew up, but the little Wally guys did really well, and we had lots of feedback on those. We had Colorado Lining International show up. They are the people who are putting up the temporary tank. They showed up for a site visit, and you will see later in the agenda, there's a change order from the site visit as well. So that was a pretty big ordeal, took a lot of coordination to get that done. Along with the parks budget, sprinklers, we've had some pretty massive issues this year. So we had the pump issue, we had to have an electrician come out. There was a bypass in the electrical box that we didn't know what it went to. Turns out there was a float in the diversion box that kept tripping it. So we got that fixed and taken care of, and further down, I'll talk about the box as well. But as you can see, our first picture here, this is Public Works. They're painting this 200 block of Grand. So we have all the parking spaces and the center lines done. So that was good. They even came in on a Sunday to do the 100 block to see how long it would take, and kind of experimented there. We also started on our curb painting, trying to get that down to be precise. We're running into a few little issues with the heat, gumming up the tips of the gum. So we're coming up with some plans on that. Maybe get an umbrella that keeps it in the shade. That's the videos that we've seen. Most of them have umbrellas. We had a pretty massive tree break in Apple Valley. As you can see here, about half that tree came down. So we're gonna start working on some more tree trimming in the parks. Clint's done a great job at taking out just the dead that's hanging out. So that was a pretty big one. It scared quite a few people. Okay. Here's some more of the sprinkler issues. The break that we had yesterday is in this almost exact same spot as that first picture there. So we're struggling at Apple Valley with that sprinkler system being very flimsy. There's some things in the ground that probably shouldn't be in the ground, and they're not holding up. So we're finding a lot of those, or abandoned sprinkler heads that someone puts a rock over that we didn't know was there. So we're finding out a lot. That bottom picture there is actually a screenshot from a video. Derek's jumping on that piece of grass, and it's just a water bed going. So we found that one a bit late just because it wasn't shooting out of the ground, but it's been a rough one. If you scroll down.
That's gonna be pretty difficult.
Oh, no.
My computer shut off. So
That's how I know my report was just all the pictures.
I really have to get, we have an issue with phones. They keep pushing updates for us on Tuesdays before meetings, and it's not working for me anymore. So.
Yeah, give us just 1 second.
Yeah.
Ditch box narrator in the next picture.
Okay, I was gonna say the picture of the ditch box, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the old one was so deteriorated, made out of wood. There were screws sitting out of it. It was horrible. So Clint went ahead and fabricated a new one out of some sheet metal. It's now painted white as well. So that picture is a little bit old. That way it's not so hot. Because the skate park is right there. Those kids like to jump on it. Yeah, so it's definitely more stable and has a lock on it now. But you can kind of see how much silt and mud it accumulates. We were able to clean that out with the shop vac or not shop vac, the vac trailer that we purchased last year. Then we have a picture of the aerator. So this was the 15 horsepower pump or aerator that we got last month, and we're able to set one in, and it's doing great. So we have the two others coming, the 20 horsepower that will go on the other side of the pond there, but it's just a little picture of what they look like. They're no longer on a boat with a torpedo in the ground. We were also able to set up the vape dispense boxes that came from county, correct? Disposal boxes. So county had this program, which kind of works out for us because we were finding a lot of smashed vapes all over the park. And those are, the batteries are everywhere, plastic. So we installed these two boxes, one at Polis Park, one by the large gazebo at Town Park. So they come and empty them. We don't have to do anything with them. It's good for us.
Are they being used, do you know?
We haven't checked them because we don't empty them, but we could and see if they're actually being used. That would be nice. And here's some really good news. So Apple Valley Plumbing is fixed. They are open. They've been open since last week. Everything's been going great. So those will be open to the public. We've kind of shifted our hours a little bit, and we will close the bathrooms at 8 instead of 10. Due to some recent vandalism that we've had in some others, which is the next picture.
So all of our bathrooms now are operational. The bathrooms at Apple Valley Park came in well under what we expected.
Yes.
Was it $750?
708, I think.
Over the repairs. Now we can get rid of all the rentals that we have for porta potties.
Yeah, the only complaints about that one is we got old lights that attract the bugs that then die if on the sink. So we can at least we can work with that. The next picture here, this was vandalism at our new bathroom about a week after we opened. Someone had set the toilet paper dispensers on fire, which only one was unsalvageable, that first picture, and it burns the actual holder because that's made of plastic. But you can definitely see that, it's mounted to wood, it was starting to go that way. We avoided a pretty good catastrophe there. I'm glad it didn't get too out of hand. A little bit of a cigarette burn there on the baby changing station.
I was trying to get a packet up there, but it's running too slow.
I'm working on it.
Okay, and that is it for me.
What happened? Is that a burn mark on the mattress?
On the baby, yeah, and then I assume it's a cigarette butt because there were cigarettes all over it. But both men's and women's toilet paper dispensers were set on fire.
That's nice. Any questions about the
It's really disappointing.
Public Works?
It's really disappointing.
Yeah.
So
is that bathroom being locked at 8 o'clock as well?
Yes, both will be locked at 8.
They will be locked.
Yeah.
Say that.
They were being locked.
Yeah, so it's. Do we still have a porta potty outside at Town Park?
Not at Town Park, but we do have one at Apple Valley. I just found out today that they opened them last week before I went on a small vacation for my 20th class reunion, so.
So,
We will remove that one.
so we won't have any more, porta potties in either parks?
Not
Unless they're
necessarily.
coming for a special event.
Yeah, we'll
Right.
only have one at the water plant. That'll be our
Yeah.
announcements.
Great. Hey, I had questions for Public Works. Does anyone else?
Yeah, I did. Except,
Yeah. Trustee,
check. I noticed that the locks on the bathrooms at the town park had a button lock on the inside, and somebody, when they were leaving, they locked it, door shut, and nobody could get in.
So we have, oh, God, was there something?
Well, no, I was
Okay.
gonna just suggest that a key lock from both
Yes.
sides.
So we have Simmons lock came today actually as well, but those handles were so off-brand that we couldn't key them. So they came with their own keys and we try to keep as minimal keys as we can. So that's why that happened. We put tape over the end so that if somebody opened it real quick, it wouldn't have locked us in or out. But they were so off-brand, you could unlock it with your fingernail, so. They were able to get out, I will say that. Should be remedied by now, we put new handles on. Anyone else?
Okay, we'll move on to the police report.
Okay, so previously in the meeting, we had a discussion about bicycle equipment. And so the department's invested in some LED headlights and taillights. And we purchased 100 of those. And the officers have been handing those out. So our night shift crews, while they're patrolling, are watching for, it's actually running about 50-50 between kids and adults right now without the proper equipment. They're contacting them, it's education only, and we're handing those lights out for free. And also giving them the information so they can go to Colorado's website and read some of those requirements for bicycles with equipment and what they're supposed to have. We also had 2 officers pass their post-driver certification test in June. Both officers had to recertify through post. They went down to graduation and passed on their first try, so that was a big relief for us. We also received an order of red dot sights. Those sights were ordered in December 24. We'll start issuing those to each officer after they've successfully completed a training course that will be put on by our 2 in-house red dot sight instructors. Probably fall before we get into that, given the heat, and we'll put together a full curriculum for that training. Last thing we had was the department's present for rally at Town Park and the accompanying march down Gravin Avenue. All department personnel were called in to work scheduled and overtime shifts to accommodate that crowd. It was a little bit larger than we originally thought it was going to be, but I'm happy to say it went smooth. We didn't have the altercation, so props to everybody who was a part of that march and to observe that march. There's no friction in that, so that's good. And then I thought I'd kind of get a little bit of parking. This is our first big test run with parking was over Cherry Days with our new lot, restructured and painted, as well as our EV lots. And since we've changed our parking restrictions in our truck route. So moving some of those cars off the street, we were initially concerned with our truck route might present a little bit of a parking problem. To date, that has not been an issue. We've actually had less traffic issues back there now that we have those cars off of our truck route. Our truckers are not calling us. We haven't had as many close calls. They have a clear line of sight down that street. That's been very helpful. The other thing that has helped is the residents that are near the EV lots. They're kind of working around the restaurant, the Flying Fork schedule down there. So on the weekends, those residents are moving into the alley and into some of their actual driveway parking spaces and opening up some of that parking there, which has been very helpful to pull cars off of me. That's been nice. The other thing is we seem to be getting some pretty good feedback with business owners who have asked their employees to not park on Grand Avenue as much. That's been helpful. What we are seeing is a definite lack of parking spaces in the alley. The one parking issue we kind of saw over the weekend, and this is not just weekend specific, is that's a primary area where most of our businesses get their deliveries in the alley. So if we start congesting that with cars that don't have a place to park, it becomes a problem for trucks who then park on the streets and unload and walk their stuff down the alley. So for future development, that's something we probably have to keep in mind.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Lamingen? Okay. Oh, yes.
I'm
sir.
just curious about, how was June for, like citations, arrest, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so we have the water for June. Given we had holiday last week, it wasn't in here. I'll include June's and July's for the first meeting in August. Traffic stops were up. That's to be expected. We see it as soon as it gets warm, we see that uptake in traffic. The big takeaway in the first numbers I saw for June are VIN inspections. VIN inspections were very high. We do have a certified van inspector on staff. The state has changed that fee from 50 to 54. Given that that's a state fee, that change will accompany what we do already. But all of our officers are certified to give traditional bin inspections, and we did a lot of those. So a lot of vehicles are changing units.
Any issues during cherry days?
Cherry days went pretty well. We had some fire issues that kind of popped up, but given the notice went out on Thursday, all things considered, people were very compliant with that. People were very well behaved. It was a good weekend considering how many people we had.
Anyone else? Does that trigger any other questions? No? Yes.
I just have one thing. I want to say kudos for all the force when they went to the demonstration in the park and on the street. I'm extremely pleased with the way that went. And we did have a credible threat. So thank you for doing that. I'm really pleased with that. And I'm also pleased with the way Cherry Days went, even though I was out of town.
Okay, anyone else? So with that, excuse me, we'll move on to actions and presentations. But before we get into item number one, I just wanted to let everyone know that we take public comment for every one of the items. And I will open it up to the public after the trustees have had some opportunity to speak. And some people can raise their hand and come on up to the podium and have 3 minutes to speak. And then people on Zoom will be given an opportunity as well, if you put your hand up. So our first item is the ratification of resolution 16-2025 enacting stage 1 fire restrictions from July 3rd, 2025 emergency meeting. And this is on the packet for 2 reasons. One, to let the public know that we did have to have an emergency meeting on Thursday, July 3rd to enact this resolution in implementing fire restrictions in the town of Paonia. And so at this point, I think I'd like to ask for a motion to formally ratify the resolution as was read and approved on July 3rd.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there an opportunity to make a modification to that at this point or no? The reason being is, and it's probably not a big deal, but the first line item in section 5 is contrary to the ordinance we have on open fires prohibited. It's currently part of town code. We can't have fire rings. Just stays right there. And so that would be the only change that I would propose, is to bring that in line with current code. I don't know if that's a possibility at this point or not.
The emergency ordinance is there, so, I mean, it restricts it, that's good, and as soon as it goes back, it'll go right back to where there are no rings. I think the county was trying to make sure that everybody was kind of doing the same thing. I don't think it would be an issue, because either way, if they have a ring, they're gonna get in trouble either way, so.
And this is saying you can have it in a ring. The resolution,
allowed.
it is allowed in a ring, and our ordinance says it is not.
I missed that when I was writing this. I thought I got.
And I would think our ordinance would trump this.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Yeah, an ordinance will trump the resolution.
Yeah, so we would apply our ordinance, still given that our ordinance is more restrictive than this.
Question. With that, anybody want to craft a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 16-2025.
I'll second.
And let me just check with Clerk Vetter, is that enough motion to get you what you need? We need to make any
I would
reference
like
to
to
July
say
3rd.
as originally adopted on July 3rd at emergency meeting, if we could add that.
And we have a second.
Okay, so if we could amend it to add that phrase, I think that would be better, because that's what we're doing with the ratified.
Do we have to approve this motion first?
No, you need to make a motion to amend to add that wording.
Okay, I'd like to amend it to state that as approved on July 3rd, 2025,
An emergency.
at an emergency meeting at 4:30 p.m.
Good job.
I'll second.
So amendment first.
So we will we need to vote on the amendment first, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. All in favor of the original motion as amended?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously as well. Okay, thank you. You can tell without our cheat sheet, it's a little harder. So the next item is the explanation and consideration of the short-term rental initiative denial. So this is there is a lot of information in our packet, but having read the emails that we received from one of the petitioners' representatives, I thought it was really important to get all of this in the public, in the public realm, and for the trustees to see everything that from beginning to our attorney giving us a memo, which explained in more detail why the petition was rejected. And at this point, I'm not necessarily looking for anything in particular. I think it's probably good for some discussion. Right now we have a moratorium on doing anything about short-term rentals in the town. We're not imposing the less than 30-day ordinance that we have in place, but that I believe ends December 31st. Right, if I remember right, yep. So it's now July. So I just want to kind of put it in front of everyone that it might be a good idea to think about scheduling a workshop to get started on crafting a new ordinance. But at this point, I just wanted everyone to see what was in the record. I think of particular importance is our attorney's his memo as to why it was rejected. And if there's any discussion, and I'll ask for public comment too after you all have a chance to, if there's anything you wanted to weigh in on. Trustee Short, Pro Tem Short.
Yeah, so thanks. I really appreciate, the transparency, like we have nothing to hide here. And I definitely trust our town attorney and our town clerk on this. And while the applicants are not here, personally, I was really excited about what was being proposed to town. And I appreciate citizens being proactive. And what I would like to do is encourage the applicants to take the feedback that was provided, redo the initiative to make it legislative and less administrative, and resubmit. I mean, that's part of what citizens are allowed to do. So I hope that they really do take the feedback, like make the revisions and come back.
I'd like to add on to that. And here is, of course, anyone can do what they like, but I would like to propose that there be a workshop where instead of those folks going to that route, that they come and be part of the workshop. Simply because it's an expense for the town to have a special election, et cetera. And it seems to me that we have lots of citizens who have spoken up for the entire spectrum. And I think the initiation of a workshop, we could have a straw man to be discussed and start getting at it that way through our process, rather than having them feel like they have to do an initiative. That's just my input on that.
Well, I think until the council determines that that's happening, I get that we're citizens, they're like, we want to enact something. So I like that idea. And if we can make that happen as a town council, then fabulous. Not that that would prohibit anybody from submitting a petition.
So would the trustees like to talk about establishing a date for a workshop and asking the staff to have another straw man ordinance to be brought to that workshop? And that could be the starting point for discussion and modification.
It seems outside of the scope of this agenda item.
Well,
I mean, if really what we were doing with this agenda item was just bringing it to the surface, do we need to?
well, in my report, I said it's at the discretion of the trustees as to what they would like to do. So I guess at this point, I'm not feeling like it's out of it necessarily, or it could be put on another agenda. I just really feel like we have an opportunity to get ahead of it and have something for the citizens to all work on simultaneously. And trustee Starr.
I think that the sooner we get to this, the better off. There's no sense in delaying this any longer. This is gonna be a long, involved process anyhow, so let's just get on it.
Trustee Hunter.
Just my 2 cents worth, I would like to see prior to another ordinance being produced by staff, to have a meeting first with the public. Just to maybe try to iron, I mean, I know this is not the first time we've done this, I'm sensitive to that. But I know that everybody has had a lot of time to digest, have had a lot of thoughts, a lot of conversations have come up. I know Deborah Spiegel's group has said that they've been meeting and talking about some things. I know the petitioners on this initiative obviously have been doing their work. It would be really great to get all those groups in one room and just come up with some bullet points to maybe help inform the direction we take, because I was one of the sponsors of the original ordinance and I thought staff did a great job. Obviously, the voters disagreed with that. So where do we start? And I'm discouraged, but I also understand that this is important and needs doing. And that's my 2 cents. That's where I would like to see it start.
Trustee, or clerk better. Sorry.
If I can make a suggestion, I don't know if you would be interested in it, but July's a crazy busy month, so August would obviously be the best time for this. And pushing it that far out would give both staff and everybody the chance to spread the word for it, so people can prepare and maybe have some kind of an input session or something at some point in August. That, I mean, we can reach out to people who were a part of the original STR licensing, petitioners, everybody, and just make sure that everybody's aware of it, to where they can at least get somebody here or something here for input if they can't be there. And a lot of people are traveling this month too, so.
I'm gonna just ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on this. And anyone on Zoom? Okay, I see a hand up on Zoom. Please identify yourself.
Hi, it's Deborah Spiegel. So, as you know, Suzanne Watson and I led the referendum to repeal the short-term rental ordinance. And with support from the many citizens, nearly 70% voted to repeal it in the special election. We formed a group called Common Ground, which campaigned to fix the ordinance, rewriting it with community. And we understood that the town would be having workshops during the 6-month STR moratorium. So I'm really glad to hear you talking about it tonight, so that we can move forward with true collaboration. And Mr. McCarthy's done a lot of work, and it's really heartening to see this level of citizen engagement. We respect and appreciate his effort to move the process forward. We agree with Pete on, if you live in your house most of the time, you don't need a costly permit to rent out your home some of the time, but other aspects of his initiative are too stringent. Common Ground has collected input from many citizens, hosts, guests, and neighbors. And we thank the town for discussing this in an open meeting. And we wanted to know how our ideas would be represented at the table. So we're really glad to hear you bring up this tonight, and look forward to an August meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hands, no one in the audience? Thanks. So further discussion. Hang on one second. Let me get
I
trustee
agree
check.
with trustee Hunter that I appreciated the last ordinance, and I think if anything, that ought to be the straw man ordinance that you start with and have a public meeting and allow people to go through it line by line, saying, we don't like this, or we do appreciate that. And then we can start from there instead of starting from scratch.
Trustee Pro Tem Schwartz.
Sure, so I just want to be really clear that I feel like we're merging the issues together. One is the explanation for why we denied the citizen petition. And then the second thing that we're merging into it, which isn't clear on the agenda, is how we're going to proceed forward. Because it makes it seem that it was denied because for reasons outside of what we're stating, which is not the case. So in my mind, it's like, yes, we know we want to have workshops, et cetera, but that is not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about why we denied this petition, which is outside of wanting workshops, et cetera. And so I just want to be very clear that these are yes, it's short-term rentals, but that's not why we denied this petition. And I think if we start merging the two together, it makes it very unclear to the petitioners why exactly we denied their petition. So I don't know, that feels very muddled to me by us going into talking about how we're going to fix short-term rentals when really we're here to talk about why we denied this citizen petition.
Trustee Stelter.
I'm rather dismayed that we've waited this long to even start the process of meetings. This is going to be a very long process. There's a lot of very disparate viewpoints, and we need to start this. Delaying much longer makes no sense. And that's all I have.
And I would ask Clerk Better, as our parliamentarian, do you feel as though if we were to direct staff to schedule a workshop that's outside the content of this agenda topic?
I do, actually. I feel like this is pretty much about, you guys discussing the actual denial itself.
It seemed to me the packet was pretty clear about why it was denied in the lawyer's explanation. And Clerk Better's explanation of why it was denied wasn't confusing to me anyway. So I think that is, and just to make that public, and that's why it's on the agenda tonight. So that is actually cleared up and just made public.
So would it be, let me just throw this out, would it be reasonable to ask for a motion to have the topic of scheduling workshops be put on the next agenda? Would that be more in keeping with the agenda as it is? I see two heads nodding.
I'll make a motion to put this on the agenda for the next meeting.
What would you like on the agenda?
The discussion of special, I don't know if you can call it a special meeting. It's a workshop with all persons concerned with short-term regulation writing.
Could you state it again? I'm not sure what
I make a motion to put on the agenda that we will
which agenda?
schedule on the July 22nd agenda, that we will schedule the workshops with all persons concerned with short-term rental regulations.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right then, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous, thank you. Item number 3, we don't have content in the packet, but Administrator Wynn said he wanted to give us a little background on what's going on with the contractor for the 2 million gallon tank rehabilitation.
Yeah, so we did receive 3 bids. The first 2 that we got weren't in a spam folder. The third one was in a spam folder. So it wasn't opened up at the meeting. The first 2 came back really close to what we have budgeted for the whole project. The third one came in between $400,000 and $500,000 less. They were missing some pieces that I thought it was in our best interest to ask them for those pieces to make that full and complete bid, because they were so far different in prices. They did submit those items because of vacations with our engineer, and there were some questions that I had that weren't answered until today that came back with questions that I should ask this third bidder. So I'm going to ask those questions collect all of the information and put it on the July 22nd agenda. But those prices, like, for a bid that came in, almost $500,000 less than the next lowest bid, I felt like I had to do a little more due diligence. So that's where we're at. It'll be on the July 22nd agenda.
Any questions for Administrator Wynn? Any comments from the audience on the 2 million gallon tank? Seeing none and nobody online? Okay. Thank you for the explanation. We'll move on to item number 4, which is consideration of the lease agreement with Big B's. And I'll turn that over to Administrator Wynn, and hang on, and do you want to start?
I'll start. So this is identical to the agreement from last year. Terms and conditions are relatively the same. Dates were changed. The lease agreement was also changed to reduce the amount of police officers required for the event from 2 to 1. And there is one item that does need to be amended that isn't in the packet, and that item is on paragraph 2B in the lease agreement itself. For access, we need to add to prepare or repair the site into that. So it says lessee agrees to allow the lessor access to the property to prepare, and here's what we would have to add, or repair the site for vehicle parking, shuttle bus, all of that. So, but other than that, it's identical. The terms are from July 18th to July 20th. So that's a setup day, takedown day of the event. And the cost was $880.
Trustee Selchuk.
As this is literally or almost literally the same agreement we had last year, we had no problems. I would like to approve this expeditiously.
I'd be happy to make a motion if there's no further discussion.
And let me just ask if the proponent needs to come up. Do you need to come up for any?
I think it's for town. Town works. Just appropriate to just.
Yeah, if you'll just give us your name and whether you live in town or out of town, and then sign
Jeff
each.
Schwartz. Out of town. Would it be possible to mow that this week so we can paint it this weekend?
Sweetie. 1 second.
We can talk about it later too.
And all right, so that's the extent of what Public Works will have to do for preparation.
There's a little bit of coneage in the middle of it or something, but I don't know if that's. We'll remove that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's left over from the Sheriff's Department parked in there.
All good, Jeff?
Thank you.
Okay, so Trustee Hunter was ready to make a motion.
Okay, I move to approve the lease agreement with Delicious Orchards and Big B's with the one following change to section 2B in the first sentence to add the words or repair after the word repair.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
unanimous? Thank you. All right, next item number 5 is discussion on upcoming water restrictions. Turn that over to Administrator Wynn.
Yeah, so I talked about this during the last meeting in my report that restrictions are coming. This is another announcement that the restrictions are coming. But we're gonna ask you through a resolution, because that's what our code says, to enact stage 1 water restrictions on August 1st in preparation for the 2 million gallon tank relining project starting, and the temporary tank being installed. So the reason we're asking for these restrictions is so that this temporary tank is really like a giant water balloon. And so it can hold up to, I think, 750,000 gallons, which is less than our 2 million gallons. Which means it's going to be, most likely our water plant is going to be constantly running while the temporary tank is in. And to try to alleviate some of that water usage that we'll see, we're going to start with a stage 1 water restriction that includes limits on watering lawns, irrigating, and anything with like outdoor landscaping. Those restrictions will probably follow similar to like what Hotchkiss has already done earlier this, I guess last month, where odd numbered street houses will be able to water on odd numbered days. Even numbered houses will be able to water on even numbered days. You know, and so for people that really think too much into this, it's really simple. 713 3rd Street will be able to water on July 3rd, July 4th, July 7th, odd days. 704 3rd Street will water on 7/4, 7/6, and 7/8, even days. Don't have to think too much about it. And this will help us so that, you know, our water plant won't have to work it's still gonna have to work hard, but as hard. And that has to be done by our code, section 16180G, by resolution of the board of trustees. It'll be on your 722 agenda.
Questions?
Well,
Trustee
yeah,
Hager?
that just pertains to domestic water, doesn't it? I mean, I would, yeah.
If you've got Stewart Ditch, you can do whatever they say you can do for water. Yeah.
Got it.
There are some people that tie their like drip lines and irrigation into our domestic water systems.
Yeah, we got 27 houses. Would it make it easier if they had we said our names? Because we'll be watering on bad days.
Which
That'll be something we can think about.
I guess.
right, and that was a question I had.
Yeah, you could just say ditch water.
Ditch water, there's people who've done that, or well water or whatever, they put a little sign in their garden.
Yeah.
We might be able to just give them little blue flags if we've got some, or white flags.
I don't know if we can help or not.
We can do that. That's a great idea. You've got white flags. I know it means all clear.
I forgot blue flags. Yeah, orange, pink flags.
Orange would be better, because blue is for water line, orange would be better. Okay, we can do that. That's great.
Which leads to what I was gonna have, I don't know if it'd be in the resolution, but how do you plan to let the citizens of Paonia know about the restriction, and are you starting August 1?
It is starting August 1st.
I suggest that it get on the community message board on KVNF now and play until end of August.
That's a great thing for our clerk.
Yeah, go ahead.
And how long do you anticipate the stage one water restrictions?
The duration of the project.
Oh, wow, so
So
which
as long as that temporary tank is in operation.
how many-ish months?
Before the first hard freeze.
Okay,
So could be November.
okay.
You don't really, we're just in anticipation of the resolution that we'll see at the next meeting. Is what's going on. There's no motion needed. Just that was a heads up for us and the public. And I don't think there's any public I see hand up on Zoom.
Yeah, I wanted to say that my sprinkler's on a timer, so I set it for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And to have to change it to, well, is this Monday gonna be an odd day or an even day? I would have to change it like every week. That sounds like really hard. So is it gonna be that strict? That's my question. And I wanted to say that when you guys passed out those red things saying don't park on 3rd Street for the parade, that was really good way to notify people. So there's an idea.
Thank you.
Yes, it will be really that strict. It's absolutely necessary.
So those are some things to think about with the resolution content. Just to say that there will be no variances.
Correct.
Any other questions? You ready to move on to number 6? Okay. We are moving on to consideration of approval of adopting ordinance 2505, operation of off-highway vehicles. And I will turn that over to Chief Lamminger, or is it right?
Or trustee check, I think was gonna.
Oh, you are, good, I didn't know that, thank you.
Yeah, this ordinance I have a problem with the way it's written in that the section 8520A7, where it says muffler, it has to do with noise levels. And it says 96 decibels at item. That seems sort of loud to me. I looked up the equivalent.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but would it be possible for you to do kind of an introduction before we start getting into what the problems are?
Sure.
Kind of review,
Sure.
because I had forgotten your public safety committee had met on this, so yeah.
Yeah, it is, because some residents had requested some regulations on off-highway vehicles in town. We had come up with some rules from various sources. Chief Lamminger put together things from Colorado Parks and Rec, or National Parks and Wildlife, and some additions to that. But the one thing I had an issue with was the noise ordinance just seemed kind of way out of whack. And it's kind of difficult to see a number on a page and really know how loud that is. So that's something I think we have to discuss and possibly change to a lower level.
Yeah, Trustee Hennepin.
I'll just add to that a little bit. So the Public Safety Committee had met last year, and I think Chief had gotten together with the town attorney and drafted the ordinance at that point after the Public Safety Committee had met a couple times and gone over this. And so we reviewed town codes from other towns of similar size in Colorado. We had our own, we looked at Rangeley, we looked at Meeker, we looked at CRS, we looked at our own existing code, as well as Colorado Parks and Ben Chief's own experience. Anyway, everything that's in this ordinance, the Public Safety Committee had discussed. The one thing that I did want to bring up also is we did have public comment. I know there were 2 folks that had emailed the board as a whole, so I think everybody at this table has likely received the same. And I would like to bring those items up just so they're a part of the record. Let's see here. Just read this. This is from Rick. Yeah, this is from Rick. Sorry that we couldn't attend the meeting. It basically didn't work out with their work schedule. They say that I'm disappointed that OHVs are still going to be a presence on Peonia streets based on the proposed ordinance. The very name OHV implies that they're designed for off-highway use and not in-town use. I realize this is a point of semantics, but it's an easy go-to. There are plenty of surrounding BLM and Forest Service areas where they are allowed and where they should be used. Our home is on the corner of 2nd and North Fork, and we're witness to the worst that OHVs have to offer in our town. Even with the occasional police presence, there's constant speeding up and down 2nd Street and even on North Fork. I was under the impression that OHVs were to follow a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit and not the new 20-mile-per-hour speed limit for cars and trucks. They definitely drive faster than 15 and usually drive faster than 20. The noise restriction in the new ordinance is 96 decibels, which is entirely too loud for residents in Peonia. We're starting to see OHV occupants wearing industrial earmuffs because they don't like the noise. I find that ironic. We often have to leave our porch and go inside to escape the existing loud OHV activity. And on 3-day holiday weekends, we often have a slew of razors and side-by-sides traveling up and down 2nd Street with their loud engines, often blasting music from audio speakers mounted on the roll bars that are designed to play loud music. It's the worst of both worlds as a resident, and we're noticing more late night OHV riding, which forces us to close our windows at night and avoid the racket. During the hunting season, we've often have short convoys of camo-clad out-of-town hunters traveling up and down 2nd with their weapons displayed on their OHVs. 2nd Street is busy enough without the addition of OHVs ripping around with rifles mounted. We often see parents driving OHVs with children sitting on their laps and no helmet for the child. The adults don't wear helmets as a rule. We've seen OHVs being driven by an adult with several children on board, obviously overloaded. There are several OHVs we see every day and several times a day as if this is their recreation driving up and down our streets.
We've witnessed close calls from our porch of OHVs and children riding bikes, skateboarding, and riding scooters. I find it hard to believe that all Paonia OHV operators are insured as the ordinance requires. It's a shame that we're approaching the level of OHV use that Lake City and Moab have.
And then there's one other email that I'd like to read from Linda, the same email address. Bear with me, sorry.
She had that table.
Yeah, but there was also a separate email to the town administrator that we had responded separately to. So looking for the, here we go. Okay. Dear Paonia Town Manager and Trustees, I'm extremely disappointed with the details in ordinance number 2025-05. It does nothing to reduce the noise of these OHVs on Paonia streets. I think it's essential that everyone interested in drawing up an ordinance spend some hours sitting on 2nd Street in the residential areas. The OHVs are extremely loud, fast, and as they come roaring out of the dirt road by the railroad tracks from Lambourne Road to North Fork, aggressive. In addition, the noise decimal level of 36 decibels, number 7 in section 8520, is considered very loud under levels of noise graphs see attached. I can attest to that as we try to sit on our porch in the evening and have to go inside when the OHVs come roaring up or down 2nd. Is anyone who is involved in this ordinance living in a house or 2 away on 2nd? And how interesting to see some of the OHV riders wear ear protection. If it's too loud for them, it's too loud for us. And if they are not wearing ear protection, they're blasting their music. It's easy for those who are in other parts of town to think OHVs are not a problem, to come hang out on 2nd and you'll understand our frustration. I've read Title 33 of the CRS, as mentioned in the agenda, and unfortunately cannot see where it talks about registering an OHV. Hopefully it lays out costs to register an OHV as they do as much damage to our roads as cars and trucks. I had hoped that with the understanding of light pollution in our town and the work done to obtain dark sky town status, we could now turn our attention to noise pollution in Paonia. We especially noticed the difference in noise levels when we go into the town of Dolores for our work. A smaller town than ours, but one bordered by national forests as well. If they can keep OHVs off their town roads, why can't we? I admire so much about our town administration and believe you make so many hard and important decisions that benefit our town. Allowing OHVs free rein is not healthy for any of us in our small town. Please lower the permitted decibels, make sure the OHVs are paying registration, and lower their speed limit to 15. Or better yet, do as Dolores has done and restrict them from town property. Thank you for allowing me to send in an email since I'm out of town working. So those were the only 2 public comment that I am aware of. And I would like to bring up a few things in answer to that. So when the Public Safety Committee was meeting, we did discuss these things. And I did respond to this one and send her the correct article in the CRS that addresses the registration. So hopefully that solves or answers that question. As far as lowering the speed limit to 15, that was something that we did see in other towns. But in discussing it with our chief of police as the Public Safety Committee, and chief, you can speak to this as well. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's my understanding that not only the enforcement of differing speed limits for differing type of vehicles is difficult, but then also having different vehicles on the road with different speed limits also presents its own problems. And then we had also discussed the decibel limit. And I would like Chief to speak to this, but I know the measuring of it can be really not straightforward and difficult. And I know that we do have nuisance noise ordinances currently in our town code, and it's all complaint driven. So and those are likely more easily enforceable than a decibel limit on an OHV tailpipe. That being said, what we've included is mirrored in all the other towns and CRS information that we were looking at.
Trustee Heck, do you want to follow up with that and then we'll ask Chief Lamminger?
I would check.
Check.
I was gonna say, I did come and speak with Chief Lamminger, and we did talk about the difficulty of measuring And he said they prescribed a certain distance from the muffler to measure for this 96 dB. But I still think it's difficult. I was looking up sound equivalency in levels, and I noticed in that one letter, she included a chart. And it is a very difficult thing to use this approximation of what something, a dB level is. And it's not linear, so that makes it even more difficult since it's a logarithmic scale. But one of the articles I came across was Department of Transportation Safety Guidelines suggested that trains need to have a horn that's at a certain level. It can be heard from 200 feet. And that's why it said, that's why train horns produce a sound level ranging from 96 to 110 dB. And then I was looking at our off-highway vehicles and thinking, 96 dB at idle? That's not when the sound is annoying, it's when they're revved up. So, yeah, I agree, it's a difficult thing to measure. And Chief Manager said he was gonna look at some issues like the fire engine sound, or if the train had a level that they could tell us how loud their horn is. And I was thinking like some example that we would know or compare to would be something like the fire truck. Of course, we all heard it just the other day when it started the parade. And that's a pretty obnoxious, loud noise when it's coming down the street. And to know what level that is would be a good comparison.
As far as decibels go, it's illegal to sell a tractor cab that exceeds 80 decibels. It has been since the late 70s. That's all I know about it.
And in the cab, it has to be
In
less
the
than
cab.
80.
It cannot exceed 80 decibels.
Where in here.
And yeah, any sustained sound over 80 can cause hearing damage.
Trustee Schwartz.
Yeah, I'd like to back it up even further to ask the question about, so I get that, this is in our, this is in our code that we allow the HVs, and that you as a police chief were looking for, well, how do I enforce this? Because you have to enforce the code. Is that correct? Why the Public Safety Committee met with you all to put that together?
The actual driving force behind us meeting on it was really to review it. They had passed it quite some time ago, and there were some things that it kind of needed to be a little more robust and needed added to, especially now that we've had some time while we've all lived with this ordinance. Like a lot of ordinances, it just needed to be updated. So it was sent to public safety. We took public comment. I met with several people on this, given the length of time it's taken us to get this in front of the trustees. But yeah, that was really the driving force. It wasn't necessarily we were having trouble with enforcement. It was really looking at it and saying, well, it certainly is missing some things. It needs to be modernized to a certain degree.
So then, thank you for that. That's helpful. So then the question I have to ask is, are we just trying to fix a bad code? Like, does it make sense for us to just not allow OHVs in town? Like, yeah, I have been to Moab, like it's awful there, like those communities, like, why can't we, like, I don't want to try to fix a bad problem, but like, I want to just say, well, what do we want as a community? And do we really want OHVs on our road? And no matter how many ordinances we have, resolutions, like maybe we just need to say, no, we don't want them here. And is that an option?
You want to answer that? Go ahead. Chief Lavender, why don't you add some clarity?
Why? I don't understand why it should be a hard thing.
So
Tough.
a very, very large majority of the people I spoke with are very much in favor of allowing OHVs in town. as we got more of that information, particularly our farmers, ranchers, our businesses like them, we have a robust agricultural community who uses them. Our hunting crowd uses them extensively. The other thing that's perhaps was an oversight when I started having these discussions that was brought to my attention, a great number of people in town plow sidewalks with ATVs and OHVs, so it's a tremendous help to us in the winter. But again, once we got down that road, we saw, well, there's some things we could add to this as well that might help out Public Works, take care of our sidewalks a little bit better while allowing people to help us with plowing. So, you know, in consideration of those two emails, and I certainly understand their position, that just was not the position of most people we spoke with. It's just not what we got. And then after speaking with Trustee Chick, we did some more digging on this. And luckily some other folks have already done a lot of the homework on this. So the state of Colorado Department of Natural Resources requires Colorado Parks and Wildlife to report their statistics to them. In 2023, which we have those numbers now, they've already been reported. Colorado Parks and Wildlife program officers contacted 1,986 OHV riders. They issued 0 citations and gave 0 warnings for OHV sound violations in 2023. Now, so they wrote no tickets for that. Trustee Kevin also hit on something that this was enacted, it's 96 decibels. It's actually 96 decibels based on this standard surface vehicle standard J1287 test, which requires them to take 3 measurements on a motorcycle or an OHV or an ATV. It gets very into the weeds about using half of the vehicle's allowed RPM range, revving the motorcycle or ATV to that half range, taking the measurement 20 inches behind the exhaust pipe, and then 20 inches out of 45 on each side of the vehicle. That's the standard that's referred to in state law. That being said, the information the state is pushing out via State of the Trail, when you register an OHV in Colorado, let's be clear, anybody who brings an ATV or an OHV into Colorado and intends to ride it, whether they have a sticker or registration in their home state, has to register in Colorado. They have to follow these rules. This is the information they need. When they read it, it's operating off highway in Colorado, the following sound limits must be met. 96 decibels if manufactured after January 1st, 98, 99 if manufactured before January 1st, 98. It doesn't tell them that they're actually going to be tested on that. It just gives them the decibel number. That's why a lot of other municipalities are using that 96 decibels. It's very difficult to test that when most law enforcement officers don't have that training, for one, and it requires 2 people. And it actually requires a tachometer, which a lot of ATVs, UTVs don't have. We don't have the resources for that. So the 96 decibel is kind of what most municipalities were leaning on, given that that's the published number the state is pushing out. The other important part of that, and Trustee have hit on this, is that new OHV sold in Colorado cannot exceed the 96 decibel sound standard unless that OHV is designed for and specifically used in a closed course competition. So almost all of our new OHVs and ATVs, 2010 and newer, are already required by the state of Colorado to meet that 96 decibel level. So in our discussions, it didn't make sense to kind of reinvent the wheel here or be adding something that was difficult, particularly when we're already have, this is produced in cooperation with Bureau of Land Management, COFCO, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Colorado State Parks Association, and the U.S. Forest Service. Again, they've kind of done the homework for us. We're just piggybacking on something they've already done the work on. The decibel limits, and Trustee Hunter mentioned this, it would be easier for us to write that under our unreasonable noise statute, which is what we use already for vehicles with loud stereos. We would conduct a stop and use unreasonable noise would be what they would be stopped for, as opposed to a separate decibel noise violation language in our OHVs. But brushing this OHV up really revolved more around rider safety, community safety, insurance, helmets, eyewear, the things Colorado's requiring on motorcycles, dirt bikes, ATVs as it is. That was kind of the focus. It wasn't necessarily we have outcry or outrage over the number of ATVs and OHVs in town. It was really more, how do we make this safer? How do we modernize this a little bit, given what we see? The other part here that's also kind of a elephant in the room is our ag use. Colorado allows ag use of ATVs and OHVs. So most, even if we were to say, no, we're not gonna allow that. If it's ag related in the state of Colorado, it's gonna be approved anyway. So this kind of just bypassed us having to say, are you ag related? What are you doing? What is the ag purpose? And it just gave us kind of a foundation ordinance to use. Registration, again, there was no need to make it more complicated. You're already required to register in Colorado. So when they register in Colorado, it's $25.25. That serial number gets logged with the state, so does their information. I don't need to do it all again. The state already has that information on hand. It makes it much easier for us to track if we're stalling or if we're contacting somebody for it.
Keep going. I just have a question on the registration, but keep going.
Yeah, so this year we contacted 2 ATVOHs. One of them was for a loud stereo, and the primary contact reason was they got red and blue lights flashing off the back side by side, which is not allowed. That was the contact. They were extremely compliant. They unplugged them. Had completely forgotten they were even on. Turned their music down or whatever they went. The other was for an ATV not using hand signals. They don't all use hand signals, but the officers followed him for several turns. He used a signal on him. So that was not a contact. But again, the focus of this was really around rider and occupant safety, kind of bringing this into the modern era and piggybacking on what other municipalities in the state has already said.
And before I ask questions, would trustees like to continue with questions for Chief?
I just have a comment on the Forest Service, running it on state lands, et cetera. That's out in the open. We have houses on both sides and it echoes off the houses. I think 96 decibels is really high, and I understand the problem we have with sound, with enforcing that. One of the things is there is sound equipment available. And when I was at CML last year, they talked about it for pickleball, of all things. And there's specialized equipment. It's expensive. Maybe we can look into getting a grant or taking a series of years and building that money up and then buying that and having it like our radar trailer. And we put it around town. And when we have complaints, we can maybe solve it that way.
Yeah, when you mentioned the Parks and Wildlife didn't give out any citations, it could be because their regulation of 96 dB is so extremely high. And it's hard to imagine that we're saying that it can be below 96 dB at an idle, because that isn't where the sound problem is. It's not when it's idling, it's when it's zooming down the street, and it's obviously louder than an idle.
Trustee Chair?
Just, my concern is, maybe there should be a requirement of insurance on anybody that drives a vehicle.
It's in there.
That's in there.
And I'll point out, since we started our meeting tonight, we've been using the recommended decibel meter app on our phones. The highest we've hit it here tonight is 83.5. So this has been standard conversations. But as Trustee Chuck did mention, to be fair, decibels don't really work like that. They ramp up pretty quick and it gets very loud. But he did ask for reference, and this is kind of what I came up with. We can use that for reference, like 83.5 tonight.
I have another comment. You said you were gonna maybe try to contact the railroad and see if they have some kind of measurement on their
Yeah,
because that's something everybody has heard in town. So that would be some kind of comparison. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have empathy for people who have to experience sound that they can't control. It can be very annoying.
I'm sorry if I'm speaking on this too much, but it's just to piggyback on what Chief was saying, and that given the difficulty in the enforcement of the decibel limit, like I understand that there's definite sensitivities and people are concerned and rightfully so. But being that where we are at right now, that is a difficult thing to measure and enforce. And what I'm hearing from Chief of Police is that what they fall back on is just the nuisance ordinance for noise. So if something's too loud, it's all complaint driven. Call the police and tell them, this is going on, this is too loud. And they can deal with it. They'll wear body cams. They'll, have record of whatever they encounter so they can do whatever is needed just based on the noise without getting a decibel reading.
Yeah, I still stand by, like, I agree with, like, if there was, that we are obligated to have an exception for ATV use or OHV use by agricultural workers, and perhaps there would be with the sidewalks, because I know I have a neighbor who cleans up all the sidewalks with his. But I do, I get that you've talked to a lot of people. I am curious, were you targeting like OHV owners? Was it broad population? Because I think that there is, yes, I think that people, they really like their OHVs, but I also think there's a large portion that don't want OHVs in our community. And I'm really hesitant for me to say yes and vote yes on this, because I think we're not addressing the main problem. And that is having them in our community. I think a lot of people who come here to recreate take advantage of it. They make it harder for us who live here. So yeah, I'm just not in favor of them in general, with the exception of agricultural work related, which we could define, and that would be benefiting people who actually live in our community.
So if I might, everybody good? So I have a couple questions. The first is the enforceability. So are you going to stop people on ATVs and ask for their registration? Are you only going to be stopping an ATV if you feel like the sound is a nuisance? Or or is it going to be nuisance driven? And if that's the case, I'm wondering if it'd be better to take out the decibel level and instead refer back to the already existing noise nuisance, which is pretty much, because the decibel, I think, is a distraction. And I think if someone thinks it's too loud, you all don't have decibel meters, right? On staff. So there's no way for you to go prescriptive. So it seems like it should be a nuisance driven thing, and we already have nuisance ordinance. I would recommend getting rid of the decibels personally. I also wondered if you need a provision in here that requires they follow all of the town of Paonia speed limits traffic law. I don't see that in here. And I may have missed it, but I didn't see it. And then the other thing is OHV is used in some of the provisions, but OHV is not in the definition. The definition, I would suggest you spell out off-highway vehicle and not interject the acronym, which shows up in a couple of places for consistency. And then, again, I had an issue with that idle at 96 decibels. Again, I don't know how you're going to enforce it. And that's pretty loud. And I think that might be it. So again, I would be curious, and I'm glad to know that you found the statute in Title 33 that required the registration. I did a quick look before the meeting and didn't see it. But is this enforceable? The way it's worded, will you all be able to enforce it? Or does it need another look about what your officers really can do? And are you really going to be relying on citizen complaint, which oftentimes is too late because they're already off the street? So I feel like it's problematic in making sure we are not driven crazy.
So a couple things. 8530A refers to Title 42 model traffic code. That's where we get, that's the umbrella of following all of our traffic codes. We've adopted model traffic code, so they have to follow stop signs, turn signals. In this new ordinance,
the old ordinance did have 15 miles per hour. So that's why I'm kind of concerned that if you don't refer back to where we have 20, you might lose a little
Mayor, on 8530, section B, it says it shall be unlawful for any person to operate an off-highway vehicle on any public road at a speed greater than the posted prima facie speed limit.
And that's
That
where,
takes care of it. Section 8530, section B.
That's because of the changes we made to the speed limits.
and say it again, I'm sorry.
That's because of the changes we made to the speed limits townwide. We brought all vehicles into compliance under a single.
Okay.
And so we're including that here, so.
I missed that, thank you.
Every code.
He's future-proofed it as well,
Right,
right? So prima facie meaning on its face.
So if we make a change to speed limits later on,
Don't have to. Can I just ask, was it could you ever enforce the 15 miles per hour on the OHVs?
yeah, so, and that was kind of what I was getting at. As far as enforcement goes, most of our enforcement on OHVs and ATVs is gonna be speed driven, much as it is with vehicles. So, if we're running a speed enforcement zone on Second Street, it doesn't matter if it's an ATV, a UTV, or a dirt bike, we can still use our LiDAR to full speed on that. The reason we have registration requirements are really twofold. One, it's much like a vehicle. I can pull you over for registration if your license plate tags work, but if I pull you over for traffic, now we're gonna start that process of confirming the ownership. It's been registered with the state of Colorado. The tags match. The tags are posted. They're actually square stickers that get posted. State of Colorado has specific instructions on where those go on ATVs. They have to be visible. It's just a quick glance for us. But it checks that box of this vehicle has been registered with the state of Colorado, and you have to do it every year. It's an annual registration. So the question of, is this enforceable? Yeah, we're sort of treating ATVs and OHVs as much as we are traffic. If you're speeding, you're gonna get pulled over. If you're not using your turn signals correctly, you're gonna get pulled over. If you don't have headlights, taillights, brake lights, that's a traffic stop, much as you would any other vehicle. From there, it's a traffic stop, much the same as any other. Registration, proof of insurance, how old are you, do you have a driver's license? And you'll see those were some of the new things we added in this ordinance. Helmets, kids 16 and under, we needed that. That's something that was missing, so,
85.
again, this isn't a new ordinance, we already have an existing OHV ordinance on the books. This is just modernizing it, adding some things that were maybe not included in the original, but we think about it.
Everything, you answered a lot of my things, but again, I suggest getting rid of decibel personally, but yeah, trustee Hunter,
I'd like to make a motion just to see if it sticks.
go for it.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance 2025-05 with the following changes. Under section 8510, under definitions for off-highway vehicles, add in parentheses OHV. So both are understood to have the same definition. To revise section 8520, number 7. To remove the decibel limit with the understanding that section 10910 of the existing code will be enforced. I don't think that we necessarily need to reference that. So 8520, number 7 would read, the OHV must have a muffler that is in constant operation and properly maintained. And then I would like to add to section 8530 as item F. No person shall operate an off-highway vehicle on a road, roadway, or alley of the town while carrying any person or riding in any position that may interfere with the safe operation or control of an off-highway vehicle or the vehicle of the operator.
Absolutely. That was an addition that was discussed, but didn't. We had miscommunication, didn't make it into the final.
I'd like to second that.
Any more discussion? Oh, and I haven't asked for input from the audience. Anyone on Zoom? See, yes, come on up, Marty.
Well, I pretty much agree with trustee Schwartz about the whole thing, so you take that as prejudice, but I'm concerned, I see this stuff up where I live at the entrance to the BLM to Jumbo. And I see what concerns me, two things: safety, Cause I see little kids. I see not all helmeted, that's for sure. And it seems that they have, seems like OHV, drivers have fewer, restrictions than bicyclists in a lot of ways. It seems like you can do anything you want, so, or that's what I feel like I'm seeing. The other thing is about the noise. I mean, when we have loud noises like trains, that's for safety reasons. That's what the loud sirens are for fire trucks, et cetera. There's no reason to be noisy with an OHV. It's just about being noisy. That's the point of it. So I view them as a nuisance, and I see the value of them as agricultural vehicles, but I think that there, as someone mentioned, I think there's a real division in the town about the noise and the nuisance part of this, as you know, described by the letter writers. So I'd just like to see more input on it before it continues. This seems like this is an improvement over the old ordinance, but I wish we didn't have them. Personal.
Thank you.
Oh, so Nugent's second?
Yeah.
Yes, you second. Well, then I guess.
Well, there could be discussion, but we.
Well, that's true. As far as measuring dB, I mean, you can get an app or smartphone to see if something's too loud. But it does have, it is a judgment thing about how close you are for the measurement, and like Rick said, it's, you know, if it's in town, the noise sign kind of echoes like in a canyon, so it's a lot different. But if we could ask the police officers to.
At this point, we have to have a vote.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Yep, the vote, and then could continue depending on the outcome of the vote. So we have a motion and a second. And trustee or clerk Vetter. Sure. Okay, we'll do a roll call. You go ahead and start.
Are you ready? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. Is everyone ready to vote? Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz,
Nay.
trustee Hunter,
Aye.
trustee Heck,
Aye.
trustee Stelter,
Aye.
trustee Check.
Nay.
The motion carries.
I guess that at this point, that is the end of the discussion. The ordinance passes and goes to publication by title, and then, oh, Chief Lamont, do you have a?
Yeah.
I did look at, so I think it's over, and then I can tell.
Just so everybody that's listening or watching is clear, it's this new ordinance is not active for 30 days. It doesn't become active.
Right, has to be published by title. Okay. All right, item number 7, change order number 1 to the temporary tank at the 2 million gallon tank relining project.
I made Nikki write this one,
Yeah,
since it's a
okay.
change around.
So kind of piggybacking off of my report, so Colorado Lighting International, CLI, came out and actually did a visit to the site. And took a bunch of measurements. And upon those measurements and seeing the site, they needed to readjust how the tank got here. They usually get here, they lay it all out, do some welding, and then erect the tank. Because the pad is small enough, they're not able to do that because they can't run the equipment around the perimeter of the tank. So the tank will be diverted from Madison, South Dakota to Parker, Colorado to do that preliminary welding, and then shipped over here. Also, because there's some limited access, they needed to get a snorkel lift so that they would be able to get up into kind of an awkward angle to get all of those pieces put together. So that freight and labor with the lift as well came out to $12,730 in addition to their original. And I recommend that we go ahead and approve this so we can get our tank here.
To be clear, when she says welding, it's plaster weld, right? It's not like they're actually welding.
Yes,
steel.
like their bladder welding, fusing, however you want to call it. They call it welding.
Because it's gonna be like a big pillow,
So we don't want people to shoot.
right? And it's not, so it's not vertical, it's a pillow, right?
It's a black.
Yeah,
With corners.
I think it's round, but.
Oh, is it round?
Yeah, and as you fill it, it inflates, is how it goes. So it's gotta be sealed everywhere. So that's what that weld is. Thanks.
I mean, that is one of our big concerns, right? Is that somebody's gonna vandalize it and these water restrictions will be even more restrictive, so.
How repairable is it?
No.
We'd have to disinfect, it would be a nightmare.
Can we get some, German Shepherds up there? Sorry, Trustee.
Do we already have cameras up there?
No.
On July 22nd?
Yes, and that comes before the tank.
That's what we're hoping, yeah.
And it is fenced, and we can put a lock on that gate as well. I know you climb a gate, but and you have to trespass through private property. Yeah. it's reasonable.
And we've had these security discussions all throughout this process. I never would have thought somebody would light a toilet paper roll on fire. People do weird things.
May I make a motion?
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve change order number 1 for temporary tank with a not to exceed of $12,730.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes and we are at our last item, number 8.
To be clear,
Oh, sorry.
that has, with that not to exceed of 12,730, changes the contract price to 292,730.
Should I include that in the motion?
Sorry.
We're done.
All right, Stefan, do you want to describe what consideration of resolution 17-2025 Dole's Technical Assistance Grant to update the housing needs assessment to comply with Senate Bill 24-174?
Yeah, the recommendation is completely incorrect. You could see that I was putting these together just before I left for the holiday. So we had DOLA do a review of our housing needs assessment, our housing action plan, to see if it complied with all provisions, including new state law that went into effect. And so it does not. With Senate Bill 24-174, there are some provisions that need to be talked about, such as visitability, right? So ADA accessibility for our housing stock. That's something that, while writing the housing element of our comprehensive plan, I made sure was in there because it was already passed with Senate Bill 24-174. Because our housing needs assessment, housing action plan didn't include those, DOLA had sent us an email asking us if we would like to apply for another round of funding to update. We don't have to do the whole thing again, right? But to update and include those missing parts that were required by Senate Bill 24-174. It includes up to a $10,000 match for the grant, which is 25%. We've gotten some soft quotes already, and they're nowhere near even $10,000 to update our existing plan. So the reason I've asked for up to is just in case we do get bids that come back, or we choose to go with urban rural continuum again, and that cost is higher. Urban rural continuum is one of them that gave us a quote, and it was nowhere near $10,000.
So after this meeting, if this passes, you'll have to craft an RFP to be sent out?
We are checking with DOLA as part of this grant application that we can still use our existing or our previous consultant, that we wouldn't have to, because they've already done all of the work. They've already compiled all of the statistics. They've already done all of that work for us. So we'll just be updating. But I just wanted to make sure that we had a not to exceed that was enough to cover if something else were to come up.
Questions?
This is a resolution.
Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none. Ready for a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution 17-2025.
Is that good? For bid, or is that good?
The amounts are in the resolution.
Right.
As long as you guys are okay with it, there's no need.
Okay.
I think you mean July 8th, actually. Introduced, read, approved and adopted.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to amend my motion to approve resolution 17-2025 with the date changed from June to July 8th, 2025.
I'll second the amendment.
Did somebody second the motion? Yeah. Was that you? Okay, I didn't hear it. So all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All in favor of the motion with the amendment?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes, and there is no other business that I'm aware of. I adjourn this meeting.
Oh.